The conference hall aboard Station Tertius fell silent as Ambassador Cleveland tried to process what the human engineer had just said. His translator implant cycled through 17 different linguistic databases before giving up and displaying the words exactly as spoken. "Hold my beer." Cleveland's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep confusion among his people. The Zishian ambassador had been negotiating trade agreements across 47 star systems for 3 centuries, but nothing in his extensive experience had prepared him for this moment. Engineer Rebecca Torres stood beside the massive viewing screen, her hand still extended toward her colleague Marcus Chen, who now held a beverage container that apparently contained fermented grain liquid. The screen displayed the problem that had stumped the galaxy's finest minds for 6 standard months, the Corvin Gate. The gate was a marvel of ancient engineering, older than most current civilizations. It connected 2 distant sectors of space, cutting travel time from 8 months to 8 minutes. 3 weeks ago, it had malfunctioned. Ships could enter, but they emerged on the other side torn apart at the molecular level. 17 vessels had been lost before the gate was shut down. The effect on galactic commerce was catastrophic. Entire economies teetered on the edge of collapse. The Galactic Council had assembled the brightest scientific minds from 200 species to solve the problem. They had been working for months with no success. Then the humans arrived. Rebecca Torres and Marcus Chen were not the galaxy's first choice. In fact, they were nobody's choice. The human delegation had brought them along as technical support staff, the kind who fix broken coffee machines and reset password terminals. But when the official human scientists became bogged down in theoretical mathematics, Torres had walked up to the display, studied it for exactly 4 minutes, and announced she knew how to fix it. The solution, she explained, was simple. The gate's quantum stabilizers were misaligned by 0.003 degrees. All they needed to do was enter the gate's maintenance core, manually recalibrate the field generators while the gate was active, and exit before the corrections propagated through the system. The Galactic Council's chief scientist, a Drellian named Zoth who possessed 7 specialized degrees and 4 published papers on quantum mechanics, had explained very carefully why this was impossible. The maintenance core could only be accessed through the gate itself. The gate was currently tearing apart anything that passed through it. Anyone entering would be scattered across 12 dimensions before they could reach the core. The radiation inside the active gate would kill any carbon-based life form in seconds. The quantum fields would erase their molecular bonds. The gravitational shear would compress them into singularities. It was, Zoth stressed with all 6 of his vocal chambers working in harmony, completely and utterly impossible. Torres had nodded politely through the entire explanation. Then she had turned to Chen and uttered those 4 words that would echo through galactic history. "Hold my beer." Now she stood before the council, grinning with what the aliens were beginning to recognize as the human expression that preceded something either brilliant or catastrophic. Often both simultaneously. "Ambassador Cleveland," Torres said, her voice carrying the calm certainty that made elder species nervous. "My species has a saying. If something seems impossible, you probably just haven't annoyed it enough yet." She pulled up a holographic display showing a crude sketch that made the alien scientist's sensory organs ache. It appeared to be drawn with what humans called a crayon. "See, you're all thinking about this wrong. You're trying to solve it with math and theory and all that fancy stuff. But sometimes you just need to, well, jury-rig it." The translator implant struggled with jury-rig. The closest approximation in galactic standard was temporary fix using inappropriate materials and questionable judgment. "I'm going in with a portable containment suit, a quantum wrench I modified yesterday, and about 30 seconds before everything important stops working. Then I'm going to hit the stabilizers with what we call percussive maintenance until they line up right." Zotha's color shifted to the Drellian equivalent of pale horror. "You're going to hit them? With what precise instrument?" Torres patted her hip where a large metallic tool hung. "This here's my lucky hammer. Fixed 17 space stations, for battleships, and one time I used it to negotiate with a malfunctioning AI that thought it was a toaster." That cannot possibly work, Zoth whispered. Yeah, Torres agreed cheerfully. That's what the toaster said too. Leonardo AI image prompts, 1920 by 1080. Scene 1. Hyperrealistic cinematic shot of a futuristic alien conference hall aboard a space station, featuring diverse alien species seated around a holographic display showing a massive energy gate, ambient blue and purple lighting, metallic architecture, 1920 by 1080, ultra-detailed, science fiction atmosphere. Scene 2. Hyperrealistic portrait of a confident female human engineer in futuristic coveralls holding a large metallic wrench, standing before alien ambassadors in a space station, determined expression, cinematic lighting, 1920 by 1080, sci-fi detailed environment. Scene 3. Hyperrealistic wide shot of an enormous ancient alien gate structure floating in space, massive quantum energy fields glowing, damaged ships visible in the background, cosmic nebula, 1920 by 1080, epic science fiction scale. The emergency council session lasted 3 hours. Representatives from 40 species argued, calculated, and presented counterproposals. The Vernathi delegation threatened to withdraw their support entirely. The Krell Empire offered to send their best military engineers, all of whom would take at least 2 months to arrive. The Tellurian hive mind suggested simply building a new gate, which would only take 15 to 20 years. Torres sat in the corner, feet propped up on a storage container, occasionally sipping from the beverage Chen had returned to her. She appeared to be completely unconcerned with the debate raging around her. Finally, Ambassador Cleventh raised his primary manipulator for silence. The gesture took several minutes to achieve its purpose because 17 species were simultaneously explaining why the human plan would fail. Engineer Torres, Cleventh said, his translator carrying the weight of exhaustion. You understand that if you fail, you will die. Quite unpleasantly. Across multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Torres shrugged. Yeah, my ex-husband used to say the same thing about my cooking. Still here, still cooking. This is not a joke, Zoth interjected, his color shifting to angry crimson. You are proposing to enter a quantum maelstrom armed with primitive tools and what you call luck. Luck is not a scientific principle. Sure it is, Torres replied. We call it probability with attitude. She stood and walked to the display, bringing up a new schematic. This one was covered in handwritten notes and arrows that seemed to point in geometrically impossible directions. Look, here's the thing you're all missing. You're treating the gate like it's delicate. Like it's some kind of ancient relic that needs to be handled with surgical precision. She tapped the screen where the gate's power core glowed. But it's not delicate. It's been running for what, 10,000 years. This thing is built like my grandmother's tractor. You know what my grandmother's tractor needed when it acted up? Percussive maintenance, Chen called from his seat, grinning. Exactly. A good solid whack in the right spot. Torres pulled up footage of the gate's last successful operation. See this resonance pattern? It's 0.003 degrees off. You're all trying to figure out how to write new code, reprogram the quantum matrices, basically perform surgery on a moving target. I'm just going to kick it until it wobbles back into place. That is the single most unscientific approach I have heard in 300 years of service, Cleventh said, though his tone carried something that might have been admiration. Yeah, well, science is great until you need something fixed before the universe ends. Then you need engineering. Torres downloaded her schematic to a portable datapad. I'm going in 20 minutes. Anyone who wants to watch is welcome to. Anyone who wants to help can meet me at the equipment bay. She walked out of the council chamber. Chen followed, still carrying her beer. 15 minutes later, Torres stood in the equipment bay being sealed into what the humans called a hard suit. It looked like armor designed by someone who had seen military gear exactly once and decided to improve it with spare parts from a junkyard. Tubes connected to tanks. Wires ran to battery packs. The helmet had been decorated with what appeared to be a cartoon character holding a wrench. That is your protective equipment. Zoth had arrived to observe, apparently unable to resist witnessing what he clearly expected to be a spectacular disaster. This baby survived a reactor breach on Mars, a hull decompression near Jupiter, and one really awkward family reunion on Titan. She'll hold. Torres patted the suit affectionately. Chen handed her the modified quantum wrench and the hammer. Both had been secured to magnetic clamps on the suit's belt. "Comms check," Chen said, tapping his console. "Reading you clear," Torres replied. "If I stop responding, assume something interesting happened." Define interesting. On a scale from 1 to physics breaking, probably a 7. A transport shuttle waited in the bay, its pilot a young human named Sarah Kim who had volunteered for what the rest of the galaxy considered a suicide mission. She waved from the cockpit, looking far too cheerful for someone about to fly into an active dimensional anomaly. The plan was simple in the way that jumping off a cliff with homemade wings was simple. Kim would fly the shuttle as close to the gate's event horizon as possible. Torres would exit via emergency airlock while the shuttle was still moving. The momentum would carry her through the gate's outer field into the maintenance access corridor. She would have approximately 30 seconds to reach the core, another 30 seconds to perform her percussive maintenance, and then 30 seconds to exit before the quantum fluctuations synchronized and turned her into exotic particles. 90 seconds total. The galaxy's finest scientists had calculated that even attempting this would take a minimum of 40 minutes with proper safety protocols. Torres climbed into the shuttle. Through the viewports, she could see dozens of alien ships maintaining a safe distance, their sensors trained on the gate. The Galactic Council had taken the remarkable step of broadcasting this attempt across all official channels. If the human succeeded, it would be historic. If she failed, it would be educational. "Station Tertius to shuttle," the traffic controller's voice crackled. "You are cleared for approach. And, good luck." "I think. Luck's got nothing to do with it," Torres replied. "But I appreciate the thought." The shuttle engines hummed to life. Through the viewport, the Corvin gate grew larger, its swirling energies beautiful and deadly. 17 ships had entered that gate and emerged as debris. Torres was about to become number 18 or the galaxy's most unlikely hero. She checked her hammer one more time and smiled. "Hold my beer," she whispered to the universe. The universe, as usual, didn't answer. But Torres had the distinct feeling it was paying attention. The shuttle accelerated toward the Corvin gate. Inside Station Tertius, every available screen displayed the same image, one small human craft approaching certain death. Across 47 star systems, billions of beings watched with a mixture of horror and fascination. 30 seconds to approach vector, Kim announced from the cockpit, her voice steady. Torres stood at the airlock, her hand on the emergency release. Through the reinforced viewport, the gate filled her vision. The swirling energies were hypnotic, beautiful in the way that supernovas and black holes were beautiful. Deadly, but spectacular. "Torres, your heart rate is elevated," Chen's voice came through the comm. "You scared?" "Terrified," Torres admitted cheerfully. "But that's never stopped me before. Remember that time on Luna Station when the gravity generator started running backward? You said physics could go argue with itself and jumped anyway. And I was right. Worked out fine. You broke 3 ribs. But the gravity generator got fixed, didn't it?" On Station Tertius, Cleveland watched the display with all 4 eyes. Beside him, Zoth had gone completely silent, his color shifting through patterns that indicated he was running probability calculations in his head. The Vernathi delegation had begun what appeared to be a prayer ritual. The Krell military observers were taking detailed notes. 10 seconds, Kim called out. Torres gripped the emergency release. Her modified quantum wrench hung at her side. Her lucky hammer was secured to her belt. Her hardsuit system showed green across the board, though green, in this case meant, probably won't explode immediately. 5 seconds. The gate's energies reached out like fingers, brushing against the shuttle's shields. Alarms screamed. The craft shuddered violently. Now. Torres hit the emergency release. The airlock blew outward, and she launched herself into space. The shuttle's momentum carried her forward even as Kim veered away, the craft barely escaping the gate's pull. Torres tumbled through the quantum maelstrom. Her suit sensors went haywire. Radiation warnings flashed red. The gravitational shear tried to pull her apart. The dimensional fluctuations made her stomach feel like it was occupying 3 different universes simultaneously. She didn't care. She'd felt worse during turbulence on commercial flights back home. The maintenance corridor appeared ahead, a narrow tunnel through the chaos. Torres fired her suit's maneuvering thrusters, fighting against forces that wanted to scatter her atoms across spacetime. She could hear Chen shouting something over the comm, but the quantum interference turned his words into musical nonsense. 17 ships had tried to pass through this gate. 17 ships had failed. Torres was not a ship. She was a human engineer with a hammer and a problem that needed solving. She crashed into the maintenance corridor hard enough to crack her helmet's faceplate. Warning lights erupted across her display. Her suit's AI recommended immediate evacuation, which was hilarious considering her current location. "Shut up," Torres told the AI, and pushed forward. The corridor was barely wide enough for her suit. Ancient mechanisms lined the walls, technology so old that half of it predated most current civilizations. And there, 30 meters ahead, she could see it, the quantum stabilizer array, glowing with the misaligned energy that had been tearing ships apart. Torres checked her timer. 45 seconds had elapsed. She had 45 seconds remaining. She pulled herself forward using handholds that were designed for whatever species built this place 10,000 years ago. They definitely weren't designed for humans in hard suits, but Torres made it work through a combination of brute force and creative profanity. 20 meters. 30 seconds. 10 meters. 20 seconds. She reached the stabilizer array with 15 seconds to spare. Up close, she could see the problem immediately. One of the quantum field generators had shifted exactly 0.003 degrees out of alignment. It was such a tiny error that advanced sensors couldn't detect it. But Torres could see it because she'd spent 20 years fixing machines that broke in creative ways. She pulled out her quantum wrench and tried to adjust the generator. It didn't move. The ancient mechanisms were fused from millennia of operation. 10 seconds. Torres put away the wrench and pulled out her hammer. On Station Tertius, Zoth was making a sound that his species made when confronting mathematical impossibilities. The display showed Torres raising a primitive metal tool and striking ancient quantum technology. "She's hitting it," Zoth whispered. "She's actually hitting it." Torres hit the generator once. Twice. 3 times. The quantum field flickered. She adjusted her angle slightly, estimating the force needed through nothing but instinct and experience. 5 seconds. She hit it again. The generator shifted. 0.001 degrees. Not enough. 3 seconds. One more strike. Harder this time. She put her full strength into it, all the frustration of dealing with broken machines and impossible odds and a galaxy that said this couldn't be done. The generator shifted. 0.003 degrees. Perfect alignment. The quantum field stabilized instantly. The violent energies throughout the gate smoothed into harmonious patterns. The radiation levels dropped. The dimensional fluctuation ceased. Torres had 1 second to feel satisfied before the maintenance corridor expelled her like a bullet. She shot out of the gate on the far side, tumbling through space. Her suit was screaming warnings. Her oxygen was at 15%. Her radiation exposure was well beyond safe levels. Her helmet's crack had spread across half the faceplate. But she was alive. And more importantly, she was right. The rescue ship reached her within minutes. By the time they got her back to Station Tertius, the first test drone had already passed through the Corvin Gate successfully. Then a manned probe. Then a cargo vessel. The gate was fixed. Torres was taken directly to the medical bay, where alien doctors who had never treated a human before did their best to address her injuries. Broken ribs, radiation burns, a concussion, and what they referred to as quantum entanglement of the left kidney, which nobody could quite explain. She was unconscious for 6 hours. When she woke, Ambassador Clevent was waiting beside her medical pod. "You were right," he said simply. "About everything. The galaxy's finest scientists with centuries of experience were wrong. And you, with your hammer and your beer and your impossible confidence, were right." Torres grinned, then winced because grinning hurt. "Told you. Sometimes you just need to hit things until they work. This defies everything I know about proper procedure." "Yeah, well, proper procedure was gonna take months. I did it in 90 seconds. Clevent was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that would be recorded in official Galactic Council records: "I am beginning to understand why the universe seems to rearrange itself around your species. You simply refuse to accept that things are impossible." "Not our fault the universe has a terrible attitude," Torres replied. 3 days later, at the official ceremony honoring her achievement, Torres stood before the Galactic Council wearing a uniform that actually fit, her lucky hammer mounted on a plaque behind her. She received commendations from 47 species, had 3 scientific principles renamed in her honor, and was offered a position as chief engineer for the entire gate network. She turned down the job. "Too much paperwork," she explained. But she did accept a new assignment, traveling the galaxy fixing things that the experts said couldn't be fixed. As she left Station Tertius, Chen handed her a beer. "What's next?" he asked. Torres pulled up a report on her datapad. It showed a malfunctioning terraforming station, a collapsed wormhole, and an AI that had become sentient and decided to become a poet. She smiled. "Hold my beer," she said.